can't tell me nothing about this crypto. This O-Day, these forensics, strictly for my hackers. Hackers on the grind, I ain't forget all my port scanners, all my SQL injectors, my exploit devs.
Evening all folks, and I am hoping you are having a wonderful Wednesday today. So this is your host NCommander, and this is another episode of Hack Alt NCommander. And if someone can just give me an audio check, I'm having some issues with my setup tonight, so which is why we're a little late going up. But tonight we are checking out bulletin board systems, specifically starting with the Super Dimensional Fortress. Let's go full screen here. Let's go full screen here. There we go. And then there we go. So, for those who don't know, bulletin board systems are kind of one of the oldest ways of how people used to access the internet, and they've always had a pretty they've always continued in the background. Since the very first bulletin board systems that I'm aware of are from the 1970s. Super Dimensional Fortress, or SDF, is from 1987, which is actually older than I am. And we may check out a few other ones. But the big advantage to bulletin board systems compared to normal websites is that they're typically entirely text-based. They work great from retro computers or limited bandwidth. And the fact of the matter is people used to both access and use them from 8-bit machines. I mean, if we've got some spare time at the end of the stream tonight, I do have Vice, which is a Commodore 64 emulator on this machine, which we could try out, or maybe I'll even throw Procom Plus in DOSBox, and we'll use that. So let me drop this link in the chat. And web browser, please don't crash. So let's talk a little bit about Super Dimensional Fortress. So this is one of the oldest bulletin board systems. So let me talk a little bit about bulletin board systems in general. There are two types in general. There are what's literally a bulletin board, which is basically a place where people post messages and read messages. They may have some games, but it's a walled garden. Then you have other systems which are shell systems. That's what SDF are, where you get a limited user shell and then are able to run various commands. Back in the day, you might even run a web browser like Lynx, run FTP, and some offered hosting. If we look at so if we go through the SDF homepage and we go to, they actually offer Gopher hosting. I'm going to have to switch to Firefox. I'm curious, what happens when you put a Gopher link in Restream? It just posts as text. That's a little disappointing. So for those who don't know, Gopher was kind of one of the predecessors to the modern internet, and it's a much more hierarchical system. Unfortunately, modern web browsers do not support Gopher anymore, but there is an extension to Firefox called Overbyte FF, which another link getting dropped, which re-adds support for the Gopher space. So if we go to Gopher, I love that URL, gopher.gopherclub. We can now see that this loads, and you see how you get this hierarchy. And SDF has this very neat feature called the Flogosphere as basically a blog version of the Gopher sphere. So that's basically and the one real advantage is when you use let me view in Gopher client because I have apparently the proxy is a little bit iffy tonight because it's using the web one. but Gopher has not changed significantly in 30 plus years. I've actually written a Gopher server implementation. It's about as simple as it gets. And now we know how Jack got into punk rock. So Stephen Martin Jones, SJF, is a professor at the University of Austin. Okay, you learn something new every day. But when you see like people, go all crazy on the keyboard and typing in a system, that's basically what bulletin board systems are. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to sort of go for a few of them. SDF is kind of one that I have used myself. I think my account got deleted. They used to delete accounts that have been inactive for an extended period. So but before we go into it, let's just give you an idea of what you actually get. So with SDF, basic user accounts are free, as are instructor students. They are probably one of the last dial-up providers in the United States. I'm not actually sure how many points of presence they have. They also offer some DNS. So basically, this was designed as a mechanism of you get online, you get a PPP or slip connection, and they basically just offered it right around. I wouldn't even be surprised if they still offered UUCP email. And for those who know what that is, please raise your hand in chat right now. So if you decide to contribute to the running costs, you can get the ARPA level, which gives you voting rights, outbound telnet SSH access, and a few other things such as access to the system compiler, Twitter over console. And here it is: UUCP mail and Usenet via dial-up or TCP. So if you want to relive the bank path addressing of old, here's how you do it. I actually probably would sign up with an ARPA account. It's not... Last time I looked at it, you had to do it by mail, but I'm guessing there's a digital way to do it. So maybe we will even check that out tonight, because I like these guys well enough that I am perfectly happy to shoot a $36 one-time fee their way. Obviously, this is not a paid promotion. This is just, I've had very good experiences with them in the past. And then they have sustaining levels that you can basically use them as a VPS. So they make a pretty big point on respecting their users' privacy. If I can remember where it is, I think it's under, yeah, here's their acceptable use policy. But here it is, it's under social. Basically, one of the more recent, this is a relatively recent add-on to their website, is they have this entire page talking about social networks and how bulletin board systems fall into it. So, and basically this is how they predate the web. They don't use advertising, banners, links, or embeds, and they basically protect your data. So there is quite a few ways of interacting, but I think we should just get right into it and create an account. So you can create it on the website, but I think the most authentic experience, for me anyway, is to do it in a terminal. Oh, great. Okay, fix that. Window, please. Where is... There we go. No, okay, hold on. The age-old battle of fixing the terminal windows to work the way it should. I think this is the first time I may have actually just streamed a terminal window directly and not a VM. So for those who aren't... So to access Superdimensional Fortress, and for most modern BBSs, it is usually SSH or Telnet. A lot of them still use Telnet, but I always recommend using SSH if possible. So let's see here. Okay, so I've actually used them recently because I just got a DNS spoofing warning. So this is the thing that when SSH gets upset about a known host key, And wow, that's actually pretty high. How many lines do I have in my known hosts? Because I should have a lot. I have a lot, and I've copied that known host file from system to system. I actually wonder if my account is still standing with them. All right, let's nuke the. Do they list their private keys? Or do they list their known keys? The answer appears to be no. That's kind of annoying, and that's okay. All right, I'm just gonna hope that I'm not getting manned in the middle here. But let me check to see if I actually have an account with them. I almost universally use MCAS of all. So there is. Okay, so it wouldn't have my SSH key. I might have used NCommander. I doubt it. There is a way to see a list of user accounts when you're on the system. So let's just register a new one, and if it says username taken, we'll go through that. So with most BBS systems, you're connected to, you always log in with a new account user. And as an interesting note, NetBS Superdimensional Fortress runs on NetBSD. They do not run on Linux. So log in as new. So we are the second guest today. And I just realized, I apologize, the music just went el poof. There we go. And then the volume levels are good. Perfect. So press your backspace key. That's actually quite nice that they do that, because older terminals are basically, well, how many, show of hands if you've ever gotten the dreaded *H. So a lot of this is it's telling you that you're creating a Unix shell account. It's different from anything you might have used, especially if you did not use the internet back in this day and age and you're not familiar with terminal stuff. So let's see if I can grab MCAS Deval. And I get this distinct feeling that my terminal is not 80 columns. It's not. That's why. There we go. Okay. That it is fairly important that when you use bulletin board systems, you do in fact have an 80 column display, and I will fix. The reason for that is ASCII art and similar is a big thing on a lot of these. So if you're using one for modern PCs, and I just realized my webcam appears to have frozen. Am I still streaming? Yeah, that is completely frozen. Hold on. There we go. Okay. So this gives you the policy, the privacy policy talks about various things. I should have done this on screen so I could easily scroll it. That's fine. But I agree with it because I have already read it. So enter your name. You know what? I'm going to do this part with the VM window off, just because I don't want to make it that easy to dox me. I mean, it's not like it's that hard. Most of my information is public. Especially if I'm going to give my postal zip code. So the questions it's asked thus far is your name, year of birth, if you're a radio ham radio operator, and if so, what is your call sign? I am actually a licensed ham. I am not an amateur or professional DJ. I don't use DSL. I do play Minecraft, so I will say yes to that question. Okay, and it's now to chant Neo. It's asking me accessibility. Actually, I can probably turn this back on because the questions have gone past with personal information. So I don't need accessibility features. I don't remember where I heard FDS. So I'm just going to say used it before. Teaching on stream. So there we go. So create account. And this is all the services it basically gives you sets up. You even get a little blog, Twitter, there's their Minecraft, and so forth and so on. So create account, and it wants me to set a password. Okay, it is not echoing my password. Okay, so now it is doing the negotiation, creating the login account. Let's see here. Oh, they've added a Mastodon account. So they do have a Twitter, which I will drop in the chat. So if you ever want to learn what Unix systems are like, this is not a bad way to do it. So, and let's see, we're picking a host. Okay, so it will, yes, this is what I remember. So there is a validation step with Superdimensional Fortress, which we can check once we get online. So this gives you the service hosts. The moon is wax gibbous. I don't think I said that right. It gives you the phase of the moon. And then you basically get a list of commands and accounts, and shows you where to start. So let's go with COM. So one of the big things about Superdimensional Fortress is it does have its own set of chatting mechanisms, and COM is one of the built-in ones. So it's a good way to interact with other users. So let's see here. This is okay. So let's see if I can remember how to do this. So greetings. Oh boy. Okay, yeah, so it's doing review. Alright. I think I'm going... Helps when you know the actual commands to use this. Let me see here. Help. Uh-oh. Bear with me. I'm going to need a quick reference guide here, because I used to know how to use it, and now I don't. So everything is documented on their website fairly well. So if I look at how to do COM, let's see here, based off blah blah blah. Yeah, let me go full screen so you can look at what I am looking at. So Tor title tilde. And I should also show how to do validation, but like I said, as long as you log in regularly, your account will not be deleted. So okay, so FAQ, yeah, okay, so FAQ has most of the commands. So holy cow, that is an outdated question. Can I use AIM or ICQ here? Let's get some F's in chat for chat services that have gone bye-bye. Wow, that is old. Let's see here. So there is a section here about how to use the older. So basically everything you need to know about using the service is located here on their FAQ, because their FAQ is surprisingly in-depth, but sometimes it, you know, I just have thought, if I do mancom, does it, that doesn't help. Here. Okay, there we go. I finally found the commands. All right, so, or let's see if I can remember how to do this. So what I did was I just pressed enter multiple times and then it just gave me that. So usually you have to go to a specific room. I think I am in the guest room. That didn't help. We are going to watch me suffer trying through this. Unfortunately, I did not have time to go through this in depth. So we're kind of just learning as we go here. So yank into room, usually the terminology here is a little bit off. What I'm looking forward to is how you list rooms. Let's see here. And I'm not used to not being able to press F. So, okay, so I am... Okay. See if I got this right. Alright, so apparently you just double tap enter and it sends your message. I just don't know if it's working correctly. But the whole point of COM is it's based off if I remember correctly, it's based off a mainframe chat program from Tops 20, which is a very, very old school mainframe system. So it's a little bit more obscure. One of these days, I do kind of want to play with mainframes on stream using the Hercules emulator, but it's it's diving into this entire world of like, oh my god, I have no idea what I'm doing. So if I do room history, okay, so there's been a few people here, and I actually did have previous messages, so just wanted to currently showing off SDF on a stream about BBSs. Want to drop into COM after remembering how to use it. Hope folks are having a great day. Come check us out on Twitch TV, DEFCON 201, and no, it's DEFCON 201 Live, isn't it? Yeah, I always forget. We are DEFCON 201 Live. Oh, look, we have an our chatter. It's hard to talk and type at the same time. Thanks. Been used to use FDF back in the day, but wanted to demo it on stream, so I set up a new account. I'll remember to validate this one. Okay, there we go. So that's basically COM in a nutshell. Like I said, it's pretty similar to IRC. There are multiple rooms, and the other big thing you'll find on SDF is there are a few multi-user dungeon games. Muds, Mushes, Moose. There's quite a few of them in general. And a lot of times you find them on dedicated servers. But if I remember correctly, SDF does have some. So, and my cursor is photobombing the stream. So, all right. Let's see here. So do you need me to do some tricks for your audience? Having some slight issues getting the chat to refresh. It's just been so long, I can't quite remember how COM works. So far, is there any questions in chat? Anything that they want me to demonstrate on SDF or similar? For those who are wondering, the name SDF refers to Super Dimensional Fortress Macros, which in the United States you might have been more familiar on the name as the name Robotech. I'm not exactly sure how they picked that name, but it's what I think of when everyone says Macross or SDF, I think of this, and not the anime series of the mid to early 90s. See, if you think... Got stuck. Yeah. Come on. Let's see here. So it started as an anime discussion board according to Wikipedia. I actually didn't know that. So that's something new. Biggest... Come on. I don't... One little quirk is you do need the double tap to get the message to actually send. So, but like in all things in life, a double tap is a means to success. Make sure, you know, that's how you survive the zombie apocalypse after all. So, let's see, what client am I using? So this does bring up another point, is depending on the bulletin board system you are using, some do have dedicated clients that you should use over Telnet or SSH, primarily because some of them just work better. They don't handle what's called a cursus terminal very well. So, like, one of the very old ones that I think we'll check out next, which is ICSA. It is such an old bulletin board system. It was originally hosted on HP domain, so it's very quirky if you don't use their dedicated terminal. Although I've had less issues with it. So, all right. I'm going to drop, but be back later. Need to show the rest of SDF. Okay. Okay, I see. Okay, so when I leave it like this, it's waiting for a message to... Okay. So the way you use this is you tap enter to type a message, and then when it's prompt like this, it's basically waiting for input. That is another thing you will see in a lot of bulletin boards, especially ones that are similar from a mainframe heritage. Because, oddly enough, status prompts seem to really have been a Unix invention. So, who knows. I used to do a lot of work commercially on Stratus Voss, and that system has no prompt whatsoever. If you wanted to know anything about your current status, you had to type a command into the void. Okay. Yeah, then you just type Q. So, alright, we have basically covered that. So, as mentioned before, this is basically a standard NetBSD system. They used to be on DEC Alpha based hardware for many years, and I think it's only in the last 3 to 4 that they finally retire it. I remember they were like one of the last users of DEC Alpha. And they used to have an FAQ on why they were not switching to Linux. So this is very similar to most Unix systems, but there are differences because this is BSD. Maybe someday we'll do an HACK ALT NCommander going into the BSDs more in depth. So if we type help, you can get a list of the various topics available. Like if you want to look at Twitter, let's do that. So let's do TTY Twitter. Who are we going to listen to? Let's look at the official DEFCON 201 account. I think something be broken. All right, I'm going to keep a bug list. So the thing is, the other thing is that sometimes you find bits of BBSs that have, shall we, had a little bit of bit rot. So there it is. So validate was the other thing I wanted to talk about. So your account is only valid for so long unless you do a validation. So with validation, let's see here. Give validation for that class, referred to as a friend. So, okay, so their validation has changed. Looks like, oh, there's more. Let's see here. So, yeah, so this is what I remember. The way you do it is you get a stamped envelope, a sheet of paper, and $1 US. You write your name on it, you send it to their post box in Washington. You can also validate through PayPal for $3. And if you decide to get, and they also now accept Bitcoin. So maybe Crypto Barons, here's an example of a good place to spend Bitcoin. I don't know if Mr. Side Pocket is in our chat tonight, but hopefully he is. And it does go towards an ARPA membership. These guys are pretty awesome, so I do recommend you check it out. And they used to, and I guess they look like they still do, U.S. military personnel, and I believe this is both current and former, can also get the higher level credentials for free. We can check that. I'm not a veteran, but I do know there's at least one in chat. So yeah, the validation process is waived for all military personnel or anyone with a .mil address. So there is that. Okay, and there's an error BSDism, because normally on Linux, if you want to clear your terminal, it's reset. On BSD, it's clear. So, let me see what else we can take a look here. So, basically, this is a list of all the commands that we can use. We can type Unix to see what commands we can use. And you can see there is not a lot at the moment that is available to us. So we can make a gopher, we can make a home page, basic ping. I think we can use links. Yes, we can use links. And SDF is one of the websites that basically renders exactly the same as it does in browser as it does in text. So I just realized my terminal colors are incredibly ugly. I had fiddled with the color scheme because I tend to play a lot of NetHack, but apparently my color scheme is pretty much atrocious in general. So this is basically what a shell account is in general. We can go to the B board, which is bulletin board. Oh, this I recognize. This looks very similar. This is what used to be on, what's it called? OpenVMS Notes. I don't know if this, I'm guessing this is a clone of it. So, same sort of system. You can go through the various forms. So, let's see if there's a good place to drop a line. I just noticed they had a COVID form. Wow, you know you're living in 2020 when the bulletin board systems have expanded themselves. So let's see here, keyboards. So a lot of times that you'll find in bulletin boards that have been on for a while is sometimes they have a lot of groups that are kind of quiet because the systems have unfortunately lost users over the years, because internet. So I think we're in the we're in the general board right now. If I do question, let's see here. So it's based on the old community core. Oh yeah, no, it's based off a legitimate one. So this talks about how to use it. So You post it with the P. You can deposit bulletin boards. You can archive, and we can list. So if we do an L for list, we can see some spread. Wow, holy cow! This not that many threads here. I'm actually curious. What is this? I won some Spectrum in an FCC archive. So I think if I do 2. Okay, that is not what I wanted. So let's see here. Scroll forward. So there is ID. Okay, so good. Arrow keys work with this. Like I said, there is a learning curve with getting involved with bulletin board systems. I'm not going to deny that. Usually there's pretty extensive online help. Here, so I want to type 2. And then I can read the post. So this is basically Usenet or Echo Mail. So I won some Spectrum and FCC auction. Back last year, a friend of mine formed a limited liability, and they won. Wow, they actually won 200 megahertz wide blocks. That's actually really impressive. If it's just a small, but I guess there were some areas where the main companies just didn't bid heavily for Spectrum. You know, they may have put a token bid in, but you know, there's some areas. It's like, who knows? This has to be one of the more interesting threads, so let's keep following it. So frequency range, it's in the high microwave. That's probably why they were able to get it, but still. Let's see here. So, being a ham radio licensed operator, I know a fair bit about how the FCC manages. So there are a lot of rules. Even if you've gotten the Spectrum on how you construct towers, you have to document the antenna type. The amount of information the FCC has about any given transmitter is really quite impressive and also incredibly difficult to find and or read. So let's make a post. So if I remember correctly, I think if I do, oh nope, that was not it. I think if I am in general, so I want to go to general, and then I think I want to do reply. No, how do you? Okay, how do you write a new post? Is it deposit? No, deposit I think is. You can type specific things. Yeah, no, it's P. Okay, so if I do P, so demoing SDF for a live stream. Oh wow, and it actually uses Pico, not the legitimate Pico. Greetings all. I'm just dropping. So folks, if you want anything in your messages to the SDF community, make it known in chat and I will add it in. Dropping a line. I decided to demonstrate SDF and shell systems plus BBSs on a live stream I host weekly called HACK ALT NCommander. We're still on a bi-weekly schedule, but we are going to go back to weekly soon. This is actually the last HACK ALT NCommander that is hosted in New York. I am moving as of next week, so I don't know if we're going to have and that's why we're not having a show next week. But I am hoping after I move, we will be back to a weekly schedule. So far, I've demonstrated COM and obviously B-board. Just wanted to. Oh, lag. There was lag. That was lag. Thank you all for still being around. I still remember using SDF ages ago and sadly never validated that account. If you want to check us out, we are DEFCON 201 with the host at hosting this show. And I'll just drop our Twitter, DEFCON 201 NJ, Twitch, DEFCON 201 Live. I don't know. Well, how did we end up with those being two different things? If I remember correctly, so it should be Control X. Yeah, we'll post it. We're not going to add a poll. We type it. Oop, that is not what I wanted. Keyboard, and then we can go to here. Did it post? Huh. Wait a minute. Did I goof that up? I do wonder if there's a delay, but or I may have kill filed it because I've already read it. Alright, anyway, I think we've covered that enough, so let's see what our commands we have to do here. So, if you're one of those folks that still have a legitimate POTS modem, there's dial-up. Unfortunately, I can't do anything with it. These feel oddly obsolete. I don't know why. I know AIM is dead. I think MSN is dead, but I'm not completely sure. Is ICQ dead? Okay. I think it is. Because I remember I had an entire conversation with Foon on Twitter about this, because we were trying to see if we could get a legacy ICQ emulator working, which is a project I have saved for a rainy day. So, okay. So, set your backspace key. God, you don't know how much I appreciate this. And then, yeah. So there are a few, and then there are more software lists available. Like if you go to software new, you can see all the packages installed in the system. Some of it, why is there GNU COBOL? No, I'm not going to think about this. Because if I think about this, it's the path to madness. So, we could check out more of the chat system. We could set a gopher. We could let's look at the games list real briefly. Because some of these I am actually very good at NetHack. I have actually beaten it. For those who don't know, NetHack is a free and open source reimplementation of Rogue that adds a lot of things, and it is a notoriously difficult game. You live on one life, and actually, look, they actually have the original Rogue since it's been in BSD games for years. So far. And then they have a lot of other early MMOGs like Dope Wars, the Hack, which was the predecessor to NetHack. Despite the name, NetHack is a single-player game. Zork. I don't think I could beat Zork on camera. I would probably get stuck in an endless loop. But I have to. Welcome to adventure. Would you like instructions? Yes. Let's. Wait a minute. I asked for Zork and I get Colossal Cave? What? That's the wrong game. In Zork, I am likely to be eaten by a Gru. Colossal Cave, I can beat a dragon up with my bare hands. And yes, it's pretty unbelievable. Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna put that in my little notes file. Running Zork launches adventure. Wrong game. Right genre. So apparently I think we are doing quality assurance on a bulletin board system. Okay. Alright, let me see if I can remember how you can quit. I think it's just... somehow we managed to get 27 points just by starting up adventure and quitting. Maybe that's the right move in life. I jest, but let's see here. I should actually, for a DEFCON 201 teaching experience, I may actually talk with them on using, for folks in chat, for some reason chat's being a little iffy for me tonight. Would you like a larger overview on how to use Unix systems, how to do basic Python Perl programming, using Vi Emacs? If there is enough interest for this, and make yourselves known in chat and on Twitter, I will be willing to host, maybe as part of HACK ALT NCommander, maybe as an alternative, some basic sessions in using Unix with the SDF infrastructure if we don't set up our own. Although I tend to like using pre-existing infrastructure versus build your own, because then other people can take advantage of it. Here, seriously, why is... Okay. Let me reload my chat because... Alright. I am going to assume that my chat is being iffy and not too worried about it. So, I think that was FDF in a basic nutshell. And I just remembered FDF was the name of the ship. Because in the very first episode of Robotech, an alien spaceship crashes in Japan. They rebuild it, and then aliens begin to attack, and they do a spatial fold, and they end up out in Pluto, and the entire first series is them trying to get back to Earth. Holy cow, I think I just relived the 90s in about 3 seconds. So there are other types of bulletin board systems in existence besides FDF. FDF is historically what we would call a shell system. Let's see here. What else can we show? I know Virtually Fun runs a Synchronet one. I don't know if it's up at the moment. Oh yes, and we just recently passed 25 years of Windows 95. So this is not a today, but had I thought of it, I should have gone through and installed the Chicago builds. So, okay. That's fine. The reason we're here on Virtual Fun, though, is that NeoZed does, or did, let me see if he still has it. He used to run a Synchronet bulletin board system. I'm not sure if he still does or not. So, and he actually runs it on OS 2. So it's like about as period crazy as you can get, but I think he may have taken it down. He was having problems with it, and unfortunately, I don't think he's here in chat tonight. Because he does a lot of crazy things. He has a hosted version of Alta Vista, if you really want to remember them. But there used to be... here it is, my BBS. And, I gotta tell him... Okay. No, this is really, really hosted on a Host 2 system. So Synchronet is one of those programs that tend to want its own client. It is possible to telnet into Synchronet, but I think we will try using the Wine. We will try using Wine for this. I'm not even sure this is a 32-bit binary now that I think about it, considering how old Synchronet is. Yeah, it's not having that. It is not having that. Hum instance available. Let's go to the files area. Okay, I think there's a little bit of bit rot here. Let's see if we can successfully telnet into this. I have that sinking suspicion. I think we're going to want to use the Synchronet client, so we'll come back to this one. I'll futz with it later, perhaps on stream. So let's check out a different bulletin board system called ICSA, if I can remember. So this one sort of claims to be one of the oldest ones, and they run Citadel. So I can remember. And again, I will drop the link in the chat. Okay. Yep, Iowa student. Here we go. Despite the name, it is open to the public. So I should, theoretically, have an account on this one. Although, if I remember my password, that is an entirely different thing. So, okay, step one is putting a URL into Telnet. So because this is a Telnet-based one, just as a note, passwords are not secure. I may have gone deleted. Yeah, okay, so my account may have gone tossed. So we're just going to log in as guest for the time being. We are in an ANSI terminal. If you ever get asked that question, 9 times out of 10 you are on an ANSI terminal if you are on a PC. So. And let me switch to view. So Citadel bulletin boards like this are a little bit different than other ones because basically the list of commands are entirely... This is making me read through a bunch of the basic messages. Okay, stop. Basically you have a few known forms that you can access, and then you basically can read this. So if you want to go see things about, say, Doctor Who, you do go jump. That's how you do it. Jump 37. This may not be working correctly because this is I'm logged in as a guest. I really wish I knew what was wrong with my account, or if I could remember it. So let's go back to known forms. Oh, it's 36. That's the problem. So jump 36. And then we can basically see everything there is to know about bulletin board systems. Okay, so So apparently back in the day, this form was so popular they used to have a queue. So we do new. And you basically start going through the messages in reverse chronological order. The thing with Citadel systems is they only usually hold a limited number of messages. I know for ISCA, because I used to be fairly active here, is it was 200 messages and then it just disappears into the aether. and there's no threading. So these tend to be fairly simple to use once you get used to the key commands. In that case, it is what did I do? Either I got disconnected or something broke. That's what happened. Once you get used to the key commands and jump from topic to topic. I think for the moment, we are looking at old school bulletin board systems tonight. We're probably not going to go too late just because as I'm still getting ready to move. This is going to be the last HACK ALT NCommander hosted in New York. If everything goes as planned, my next one will be in New Jersey. So what we did earlier is I gave a full tour of the Super Dimensional Fortress, which is one of the oldest public access Unix systems on the internet, and one I highly recommend checking out and using. Then we did a brief tour of ICSA. I tried to connect to set the Synchronet runtime to access Neozid's BBS. He's been not old school software, but wow, I clicked that and it opens in the wrong tab. Do I have this on full screen? I do have this on full screen. So, yeah, that's. I do see. Well, you've got software from 2000, and I hate to say this, but 2000 is becoming a bit old school. I mean, if we really want to go full old school, we could pull out Icon Board. I've never actually gotten into the demo scene. Stop! You are making me feel old. How do you think I feel? I'm from '88. I still remember when we used to use Usenet as our way to communicating with folks, and I do want to do an entire thing about Usenet. I should have probably prepared to do that one tonight, but I'd have to do some setup work to talk about Usenet. I used to. So when I remember, hey, we have a Sling Show. Thank you for the follow, and I hope you're enjoying HACK ALT NCommander and all the associated crazy. Granted, this is less crazy than usual because I actually enjoy bulletin board systems. I am not doing pain and suffering tonight. I am trying to have a happy and productive life. Yeah, okay. No, that might have been a bit too far. So, for those who don't know, the demo scene is basically a bunch of hackers that get together and make old school computers do things that they were never meant to do. I think the one that sticks out in my mind, and I actually think I'm going to demonstrate this on stream. Bear with me for 1 second, because I need to switch my view for this to work. I just want to show you what the demo scene can get up to when they get full crazy. So 8080 corruption, or was it 8086? Which one was the first one he did? Yeah, this was the first one. They did two versions of this. This is one of the most ridiculous things I have ever seen. No, it was 8088 was the original one. Basically, this was showing how you do real-time full motion video on 4.7 megahertz. So, and yes, I do have a lot of interesting things in my GitHub is now linked to the channel. I also have my own YouTube channel where I do retro things and also will fill in for me for the times I am not around. Please give me a subscribe on YouTube. It really does help me because I am working towards. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers for YouTube because they are kind of ridiculous. So I do want to show this demo because I didn't. Obviously, this is not my work, but I want to show. How
hey everyone, Trickster here. Just proving that 8088 corruption is in fact a real program running on a real PC.
Myself. Okay, so my mic is back. All right, so the reason actually is because of Commodore. Because Commodore used Europe as a dumping ground for their failed products. And I am not even being facetious about this. Let me bring the background music back, and we will actually segue into... So, show of hands in chat. Who knows about Commodore? And if not, we're going to do a bit of a quick story here. So... computing history can be classified into a number of eras. One of the big the big one for personal computers starts with the 8-bit era, and specifically the three big machines of that time. That was the Apple II, the VIC-20, and the TRS-80 Model 1, which were the first three major home computers. So, and the 8-bit era ran from about the mid to late 70s up until the early to late 80s. With the Apple II probably being the depending on where you were in the world, depended on which system was the most popular. In Europe, most of what they had were the UK had the Spectrum and the Dragon computers, and the Dragon was essentially a rebadged TRS-80. Here in the United States, Commodore had the largest market share, followed by Apple, and in most of the Russia and CIS states, they were actually Soviet knockoffs of the Apple II. I've seen those in person. They're very strange machines. Anyway, what all these machines had in common is they all ran BASIC, and they were all very programmer friendly, but the Commodore 64 was a little bit unique. Commodore of the early 80s was the Apple of the 2020s. They were the only computer company that had their own chip fab, and they created the MOS Technologies 6502. Specifically because originally they had used Motorola chips, and they had made a clone of it, the 6501, and Motorola sued. This is back when Motorola used to make chips. So, because they had such a they owned MOS Technologies, Commodore machines were able to do a lot. You know, I have a Commodore emulator installed, or no, I don't. I have it on the laptop. Crud. All right, so we're just going to use Wikipedia as a stand-in. We might do 8-bit programming sometime in the near future. That is something I do want to do, but I have to plan that one out. Anyway, because MOS Technologies was a fab, Commodore was basically able to undercut the price. Now, of the free machines of the era, the Commodore 64, which was the most popular, was kind of the most limited. The Apple II had a lot of expansion possibilities. Like, if we take a look at an Apple II machine, and if we take a look at the insides, you can see that there are actual expansion cards in there. Apple machines could also support bank switching a lot easier than the Commodore ones did, and they were very hacker and programmer friendly. Strangely enough, Apple used to be the hacker computer of the day. In fact, the full source code for Integer Basic and the Bootstrap monitor used to be shipped in the Apple II manual. And there was a culture at Apple that they were the trendy hacker company and not what they are today. I think that is the easiest way I can put it. The very first computer I learned to program on was an Apple IIe. So this machine I have a lot of nostalgia for. But I also don't recommend new people learn to program on it because its graphics modes were made on drugs. Or more specifically, they were made on Steve Wozniak, who was a genius engineer, but let's just say it's a little quirky. The Commodore 64 is a lot more straightforward in that regard. So, Commodore basically had two back-to-back hits. They had the VIC-20 and they had the Commodore 64. Then Jack Tramiel ran into some issues, and he got forced out of Commodore. If this should be compared to Steve Jobs leaves Apple Computer, except the story gets a little bit more tragic here. He was forced out because he then went to work on Atari. So Commodore, the problem with the Commodore 64 was twofold. The C64 is what's known as a 40-column system. Let me see if I can pull up an emulator for this in my browser. I don't have Vice installed, and I really don't want to try and set it up. Please tell me this is just going to show me a basic prompt. Maybe? There we go. So, so here's your basic Commodore 64, and those colors look really off. But the problem with the Commodore 64 is this. If we start typing out keys, that's 10, 20, 30, 40. It has what's called a 40-column display, although technically it's 41. The standard in business software, and especially if you we saw this earlier tonight, is what's known as 80 columns. The reason is because with a standard 12 point font, 80 characters is what fits on one line of a piece of paper. So it's actually very hard to type with any sort of accuracy on a 40-column display. So Commodore 64, and this was also a problem with the TRS-80, were not suitable for business use. Apple was the exception. Apple had a first party, what's called an 80-column card, and later Apple IIs had it built right in. So, yes, this is actually where the 80-column display comes from. It's also something that's actually a pretty big deal on DAWs, but I'm getting... Because if we look at the 5150 and the PC Junior, we again will see this 40 and 80-column display thing. But, again, getting ahead of ourselves. There were a few differences. The VIC-20 had a 22-column display, if I remember correctly. And Commodore's line of business machines, the PET series, they did have 80 columns mode, but they did not have any graphics mode. So basically, Commodore had on one hand a machine that could do text well, but you couldn't use it for spreadsheets because it didn't have any sort of real graphics mode. There is a bit of an exception to that. If we look at I need a picture of a Commodore 64. What I need is a picture of, actually no, this will work. There were sets of graphical color column keys. I cannot type these properly without an actual C64 keyboard, but the long and short of it is that with the C64, it really wasn't suitable as a business machine. Apple was able to do it. It also was very expensive for what it was. As you know, the name Commodore 64 comes from the fact that there were 64 kilobytes of RAM available. Now, Commodore wanted to do two things. They wanted to break into the business market, and they wanted to make a low-cost machine. Now, for those who lived in the UK, we had what was called the ZX Spectrum, which was released here as a Timex Sinclair. Yeah, believe it or not, Timex used to make computers, also known as the Speccy. And the most reason that many UK users were very fond of the Spectrum is because it was incredibly cheap and it had an incredibly bad keyboard. So, but this was the computer. This was the Commodore 64 of the UK, because in the UK and the European Union, disk media was taxed a lot higher. This is actually why floppy disks did not catch on, and cassette-based systems were used. So if we, I'm getting the story a little out of order, but I wasn't even planning on talking about this, so whatever. So the Spectrum was designed to be incredibly cheap. I forgot what its actual retail price was. So for $82, you could buy a 16 kilobyte ZX Spectrum for 125 pound, so 348 pound in 2019. So what was that in USD? That's probably about 700. Not USB, but that works. So you could get a fairly full function computer for about $500 in 1981. And despite the fact that the Spectrum has probably one of the worst keyboards ever developed known to mankind, it was able to save to and from standard cassettes, and tape decks were popular back then. It was an incredibly affordable thing, and you could get games for it pretty easily. So this was basically a hotcake seller in the UK. And Jack Tramiel wanted to build a system that could compete with it. So the Commodore 64 was a high-end system. So he had Commodore Engineering build the Commodore 16. And this, oh boy, this is where the story gets a little depressing. So what made the Commodore 64 such a powerful gaming machine was what was known as the SID chip and the CIA chips that let it do graphics and sound. And the Commodore 64 has a very distinct sound to it because of the SID that kind of was the best of its era up until the ad-lib card became a thing. So the point of the Commodore 16 was supposed to be a very cheap computer. And then what happened is between inception to release, Jack Tramiel got forced out of Commodore. And so Commodore priced this at about the same price as a Commodore 64. So there were 3 models. There was the Commodore 16, the 116, which was basically the same thing in this form factor. And then there was the Plus 4, or what? That may be on a different page, which was a Commodore 16 with 64 kilobytes of RAM and a full set of Office programs, although it only ran with 40 columns mode. The Commodore 16 was kind of a flop here in the United States. So what Commodore did as essentially a tax write-off is they shipped basically all of them overseas and sent them to Europe, as well as in Mexico. I've met a lot of European hackers that got their start on the Commodore 16 because Commodore basically said, to hell with this, and dumped it in other markets because it could not compete with even their own VIC-20 or Commodore 64. And because of the limitations of the system, you had to be very clever to get the most out of it, because you had 16 kilobytes of RAM, unless you had an upgraded system, and you had the tape deck. There was a floppy unit available for it, but again, floppy units were very rare in Europe compared to the United States. So a lot of the demo scene actually got started on the 8-bit micro, and specifically on the Commodore 64. The Commodore 16. At least this is how I understand the story. Please note that I should not be considered authoritative on this. However, so, there's always been a group that have been trying to push the limits, but it's a lot about making 8-bit computers do crazy things, because when you load software from cassette, and for those who didn't know, the original IBM PCs actually had a cassette port. You have to load the entire program into RAM, and that means that on the Commodore 64, you had approximately a single tape. Yeah, I don't actually remember how much you could load on a single tape. I want to say that a tape in total could hold about 1 megabyte, but the built-in system could only hold about, I think you had about 32 kilobytes usable, because part of it was reserved for the video RAM and the kernel. And then obviously that number goes much, much further down if you have a, holy cow, if it was the Commodore 16. And the other advantage to it being on tape is that, well, you know how we used to make mixtapes back in the day? You could put multiple programs on a cassette. Apparently in Australia, they used to broadcast programs over the radio. So you would plug your computer into the radio, type load, and it would literally get the program over the air, which I think is really cool. I could play a clip of what the data set sounds like, but I feel like that's a bad idea because it's probably very loud. So a lot of the demo scene was you've got very limited graphics hardware. You've got no essential I/O. You get to load everything into memory in a single block. How far can you take it? And if you've seen some of the Commodore 16 or even 64 games, it's a little bit crazy on what you can do with basically nothing. I've done a lot of embedded programming back in the day, and it's pretty insane. The biggest problem with the Commodore series was they don't include a monitor program out of the box. The Apple II, in comparison, had a full assembler and disassembler baked into the machine monitor. I believe the TRS-80 also had one. Commodore did not make one available in the hardware. There was one you could install as a cartridge, but I know it wasn't available out of the box. So that's a lot of how the demo scene got started, because people would create these demos. They would also crack programs under those crazy handles. And as much as we as the hacker culture talks about hackers and mocks it, in some ways it's a fairly good way of looking at how the 80s hacker scene was like, especially when you go onto some of the more interesting bulletin boards of those era that I just vaguely remember. So we got completely sidetracked about talking about old school internet, but I think that segue into the demo scene was kind of a big thing. I mean, because when you think about it, people used to surf the internet on well, I shouldn't say surf the internet, but they used to use bulletin board systems on Commodore computers. I never did. We never owned a Commodore. Our home, the way I remember bulletin board systems is Procom Plus in DOS. That is how I remember it. And I still probably remember most of the key shortcuts in Procom Plus. Early web browsing, the web browser as we know it dates back to 1991 with World Wide Web. Now, sadly, I don't have my virtual machines for this, but I was able to compile worldwideweb.app from source and even play with the first web browser. In some ways, it's a little surprising on how far we have not come in that regard. Instead, we've ended up with... there's a lot I could say about Web 2.0. Most of it not family-friendly. Let's leave it there, because we're getting to the point that I'm going to have to start working on my end-of-the-year rant for Side Pocket. So, yep. Oh, actually, here's where it talks about on Wikipedia, where they basically dumped all these things on the Eastern Bloc markets, and they also ended up in East Germany and Bulgaria. It's basically how the demo scene basically got launched and why it's so big in those parts of Europe. So my brain, we were doing something. We were probably looking at old school internet. I had only planned to go to 10 tonight, so I am kind of worried. Did I run out of content earlier? And then I'm thinking, no, we could do something. We could set up Procom Plus, but I'm thinking bulletin boards don't translate too well on stream. So what do we do? What do we do indeed? You know what? Let me look for my retro software folder. Do I have Procom Plus dumped? Because if I do, I'm kind of tempted to play with it just because I can. I don't think I have Procom Plus here. I could get it, but I don't particularly want to go hunting for it. Yeah, I don't think I have it here. I have WordStar if we want to start the religious war of the early 80s and 90s. So the way I remember the early internet is you had the modem, you dial into a bulletin board system, and then we got AOL. And AOL was kind of magical, despite the fact that how much we mocked it, because not only did you get access to the AOL walled garden, you could surf the web. So, and it gave us access to the great and powerful Usenet and Eternal September. So, if those who ever want to check out Usenet, and you know what, I think I actually do want to check out Usenet tonight. If it will load, please. If it'll load, we will actually go check out the Eternal September. It is a Usenet is the original distributed peer-to-peer network. Basically, all right, we're going full history lesson here tonight, folks. So if we go to UUCP, originally the early internet, that is to say ARPANET, only existed in where are we going? The early internet only existed in universities and military facilities, because ARPANET was primarily an academic and military network, although it was all declassified. A lot of this is because ARPANET required what's known as fixed links, and it wasn't really able to deal with come-and-go connections. So the ability to access ARPANET basically required the 1970s equivalent of an Ethernet jack. So UUCP was one of the earlier solutions to this, where the data would get sent from one system to another in what is called store and forward. So email would pass from system to system along the network in what was known as bang path addressing. I would love to find the map. I'm really hoping it's here, because they're let's see, our first UUCP map. Let's see if we can find it. Old Usenet map. Oh, you're kidding me. This is not helpful. That's an ARPA space map. Man, imagine when the internet was so small, you could literally describe it here, but you know, you can see if we look at the old ARPANET. Here's Stanford University. Here's the Pentagon over here. And ARPANET actually wasn't all that different from the modern internet, because the original ARPANET protocol was what was called NCP, or Network Control Protocol. They replaced it with TCP/IP, or what is now known as IPv4, and all these were fixed links from point to point, packet switched. So ARPANET at certain points, such as at Stanford and Berkeley, should be on here. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, look, there's Xerox Park. Let's see if I can find it. This map may be from before Berkeley got connected. I know MIT also connected it, but one of the big apps of ARPANET was what were known as news groups, and the news would all be correlated on basically a single system. I want to say it was Duke that hosted it, and then it would be echoed point to point. Yeah, actually, if we look here, here's the logical one. Yeah, you can see where they're all linked together. I really wish I could find that map, because it really shows it a lot better. Nope, that ain't it. On how things would get to point. But the big thing about UUCP is that if you had a modem, you could participate in UUCP and transfer data point to point. News groups from ARPANET were then filtered onto UUCP, and those would go from point to point. Every system would download all the news and then transmit to the next system. So you'd only have to access your local bulletin board system to access news groups. You post an article, and then it gets sent to all other points along the network. This is where bang path addressing gets through. And if we actually look at oh wait, is this it? Please tell me this is it. Auto dialer, gateway. Yes, here it is. The original the first map of UUCP. So if we look here, here's Berkeley over here. Microsoft is up here. So if you want, this literally shows how the flow of email and news would jump around. And if you look here, you can see that there was an ARPANET connection up here at CCA, which is College of California, and I believe there was a second one, although maybe not at first. So this is how news groups all work. This was the original social network. And you can also see here's the start of UUCP in Europe. So anyway, I've actually used UUCP in this decade. It was in fact a thing I did as part of an IoT project, which is a story for another day. So if we go to Eternal September, let's see here. We're going to have to set up. Let's pull up. Do I even have please tell me I have Thunderbird installed. Thunderbird is probably, I do have it installed. Yes, I can set up a newsgroups account. I should hopefully remember this. Okay, with Eternal September. So Eternal September is free for all text-based news groups. Yeah, there's that problem. But you do have to tell it to use a username and password. So I want to use TLS. They do have ways to set this up. I feel like you need to do something like... I remember having to do something stupid in Thunderbird to make this work. And for those who do want to check out news groups, Thunderbird is probably the best, and I'm putting this in quotes, program you can use for it, because it is one of the few that does support control messages and is actually maintained. Alpine is the other one, but using Alpine is not what I call trivial. Is that how you do it? I don't think that's how you do it. I think they have an FAQ. I think they have a specific FAQ on how you do this. Because if you don't log in, all you can see is the... holy cow, they are running slow. It's either me or them. And the reason they're called Eternal September is... what used to happen is every September, freshmen from at various colleges would gain access to ARPANET and Usenet at the same time. So you have a bunch of people that don't know anything about netiquette posting. It's like when you have a community that suddenly gets the Reddit hug. This is what September used to bring. September 1993, America Online provides access to Usenet to the general masses, and Usenet changed fundamentally due to it. So Eternal September recognizes that it's been 9,858 days since September 1993. So that is Usenet. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. Here we go. That's how you fix it. So you go to Tools, Account Settings, Server Settings. Always request authentication when accessing the server. Yes. So view settings for this account. Manage subscription. Refresh. Okay, let me close, reopen. Really hoping I can get this to work. Of course, it's going to do this. It can see that it can log in with no username and password, so it's being a little problematic. So one of the big things about how Usenet ran on before the internet, it was Usenet is unusual on the basis that it is actually completely independent of lower protocols, specifically TCP/IP. Instead, if I could log in, I could show this. Let me see if I can pull it up in a browser. Because I need to be able to show the headers. Google does provide some access to Usenet. It's not ideal. But if we go into the headers of any Usenet message, let's try this one. Show original. Here we go. If we go into the headers, you'll notice that these look a lot like email headers, but you can see here what's called path. And the entire point of this is that this shows the path that a message was originally injected into Usenet. So this user here used Eternal September, and every machine, even though these look like DNS names, they're not. These are UUCP labels, and UUCP, everything has a logical name. It does not talk about the underlying interconnect. So you can use packet radio over UUCP. That's in fact a very practical way to use packet radio. You can use dial-up. You could do it over X500 numbers. UUCP in and of itself was designed to be protocol agnostic. It's one of the very few systems I have used that do not care what its underlying transport is. I have personally used it over dial-up. I've used it over SSH. I have used it with an SSL transport. I'm a licensed ham. I could actually use it over AX25, probably with a little bit if I set up AROS. That is actually a demonstration. That's actually a great demonstration I could do. But it's not something that I think I could do well on stream. But so maybe in the post-COVID era, we will actually, at the face-to-face meeting at Subculture, do an entire store and forward network on ham radio on UUCP. Side Pocket, if you're here, make a note of that for when we are free of COVID. So that is the basic nutshell. I wish I could sign in. What's funny is because it's essentially an obsolete protocol in many ways. A lot of legacy clients will in fact work. Make a note that I want to do a demonstration of using UUCP over ham radio, store and forward packets, for when we are in the free and clear of the COVID era, because it's not something I can really show well on stream. I would like to be able to demonstrate in person. Yep, there we go. Okay, folks, a future thing for the DEFCON 201. For those who do not know, who are new to the stream, DEFCON 201 is a New Jersey-based hacker group. We meet once a month at Subculture, just off Grove Street in Jersey City on the third Friday of every month. We are also active in pre-COVID, we were active in most events in the New York and New Jersey areas. We were at PAX East. And we had a very long plan of things we were going to do in 2020 before the Great Plague came upon us all. God, that's like Babylon 5. So, if you are in the New York or New Jersey area, please feel free to come by once we are back to business as normal. Our meetings are now all streamed every month, and we have a bunch of other shows to check out. HACK ALT NCOMMANDER is normally Wednesdays, 8 p.m. to whenever I feel like it. Although there is no HACK ALT NCOMMANDER next week. Jack and G.I. Jack, another member of DEFCON 201 has his show Archville. Yeah, Archville is what we call on Thursdays. We also have Crypto Barons and the Master of Unlocking. And I am looking forward to the next time I see Side Pocket, because I have found the most wonderful way to repay him for all the things that he has signed me up for. So, one of the things I've actually done is, so the big thing about Usenet is it is a decentralized system, because holy cow, there, tabs, please, tabs, come back to me. Come back to me! Is that no one entity controls the Usenet network. It is instead controlled by a group of server operators that operate endpoints. And some servers have local groups. But essentially, this was the original peer-to-peer thing. And it's essentially also was the Reddit for many decades. The largest problem with Usenet is that there's no way to edit posts. And it doesn't work the greatest from multiple machines, because read status of a thread is not stored server side, it is client side. So, but it is still around. The comp miss group is actually it's more active than not. Some groups are actually very active, like the comp lang Ada group. Let me backtrack here. Like I said, we might do a more in-depth follow-up, and holy cow, that is lagging. Groups in Usenet are hierarchical, so basically anything dealing with technology is under .comp. Like, this group is fairly active, but you also notice that we have some spam right here near the top that we're not going to talk about in depth, and that is the problem. The only type of, shall we say, moderation on Usenet is what's known as a moderated use group, and that's literally someone that sits there and has permissions to post to a Usenet group, but you can't edit it. There are provisions in the protocol, that is what's known as control and cancel messages. So Side Pocket, my torture has been determined for October. Am I going to be told what this torture is before it happens? Yeah, I mean, I've actually posted on this fairly recently. For more obscure topics, for example, Mozilla, their group is not public Usenet, it's private Usenet, but they do all their talks about SSL certificate development and security, both on a list manager and on news groups. That's the Mozilla Dev Security Policy Group. It's everything you want to know about X509 certificates, but we're afraid to ask. So, Usenet is still alive, amazingly. And in some ways, it's starting to see a bit of a resurgence, because people are so fed up with what Facebook has become, with a lot of the Reddit controversies, because the simple fact of the matter is it's very hard to moderate Usenet. At most, you could get a post deleted off a server, but removing something from the network as a whole is actually very difficult, because you essentially have the DCMA it off every single Usenet server in existence. And there is, in fact, an entire service, wrong tab, called Gname, or Gmain. We can load. I think my internet is having some serious issues tonight. It was raining earlier, and here it is. Oh, they may have gone offline. Yeah, I was having some internet issues earlier. It's possible I have no bandwidth because I'm streaming. Yeah, I think... Wait, is it a DNS issue for me, or is it them? I've got working DNS. Okay. Anyway, what MAME is, because apparently here's the pronunciation guide, is it's a gateway of email to news. So it's a very useful way of loading up archives on older systems, because we've seen it enough on HACK ALT NCOMMANDER. I use old computers fairly frequently. So it's also great for reading through mailing list archives, and they also have a service where RSS feeds gets converted to news groups. So it's actually very handy for using a newsreader, and I do recommend the service. It just seems the whole thing is having some issues, and it is in fact bi-directional. So you can have a mailing list show up as a news group and then post to it. A lot of why Usenet kind of fell into irrelevancy is creating a new group on Usenet is not what I call a trivial process. There is no centralized administration and control of it. I've actually set up that is Internet Net News, or the de facto Usenet server software, that you could, in theory, any user can send what's called a new group control message. In practice, you have to have the group agreed to in one of the config mailing control lists, like in the alt config, and then you have to get server groups to manage it. So logistically, for a new community to form on Usenet requires a lot more effort. I mean, if we go to Reddit, you can create a subreddit in about 3 seconds, and boom, new community. Then add to the fact that there's limited moderation controls. Most ISPs do not offer Usenet. In fact, I don't know of any that still offer Usenet anymore. And it was kind of a slow decline. The thing is that in the period between Usenet and Reddit, a lot of us tended to be used private bulletin board systems, which sadly have become a little passé. But I mean, I have a lot of memories. I wonder if they're still around. Is anyone besides me remember EasyBoard? I think they're gone. They have been, yeah, they're dead. They are dead. But I remember EasyBoard. It seemed like every website had its own EasyBoard community. Because at the time, setting up dynamic websites was not particularly. I mean, if you really want to have an NCommander must suffer episode, having me set up something like Icon Board. I don't even know that he has a Wikipedia page. Oh, good lord, it is still around. Icon Board is basically to give you an idea of how old this is, Vulkan was essentially a re-implementation of Icon Board from Perl to PHP that was an improvement because it could actually be installed by mere mortals. Yeah, okay, so it looks like the whole thing went poof. But a lot of the bulletin board system, web bulletin board systems basically went into decline, and now we have Discus and Reddit. I don't legitimately remember the last time I participated on an online board that wasn't on Reddit. I legitimately cannot think of that. It was, either Reddit or like a comment on a blog section. But, that was a lot of what I remember the early to mid-90s was you would search for a discussion group, and you'd find it. One of the earliest ones I remember was the Sonic 2 Beta EasyBoard group. Because this is what used to get... This is what got me interested into prototype collecting. I wonder if I can find it on the Internet Archive. Yeah, I think trying to find this on the Internet Archive is going to be sort of a fool's errand. But it's a lot of what it boiled down to. And then you had the dedicated boards. And that's sort of... Thanks to Circel, we think we have a future topic. Gnome boxes. So, Side Pocket, I feel like some dread, but I don't know enough of what he wants me to do to feel the proper and total nightmare fuel that you want me to feel. So just say. So, one thing I've been doing is sort of a hobbyist project. It's been on hold because literally once this stream is done, I'm actually dismantling my desktop for moving. I've been actually going through a lot of older code bases to make sure they can be compiled and saved. And maybe it might be worthwhile in creating virtual machines to archive and save some of these. I mean, we've played with WordPerfect on stream before. And by played with, I mean totally failed to get working. But having a collection of virtual machines that could run some of these softwares, because for those who don't know, Perl has some, shall we say, version issues that make it easier than not to make it less than easy to bring it across versions. So I'm almost wondering, as a type of preservation project, that we sit down, you know, this could be like a virtual coffee group. We sit down, we install older Linux distributions of some sort in virtual machines, and we try and preserve these bits of history, because I don't remember the last time I saw old form systems like this. You know, they're essentially almost forgotten, and, you know, that's kind of depressing. So maybe that's a preservation project for another day. I think we're going to wrap it up a bit early tonight, folks. So is there any questions for me in particular? Any questions relating to older bulletin board systems? Or anything you want me to cover in particular? I also would be happy to take suggestions for later HACK Alt NCommanders. I mean, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I kind of want to cover. Right now, the move currently is just getting everything packed up. Let me give a little context for those who don't know. Back before the dark days of pandemic 2020, I was living in an apartment in Brooklyn in January, and my lease was going to go up at the beginning of February, and I decided, and I was supposed to start a work in April. So I decided that I would just dump all my folks at my parents' and bike across the United States. I actually, crazy guy on a bike. I actually blogged and YouTubed the entire journey, or that was supposed to be the intent. Here we go. So if you want to see the story, but basically what had happened is that we had done a talk that's DEFCON 201 at PAX East the second to last week of February. And I flew from Boston to Jacksonville, and I started this trip. I got my bike outfitted. I was in Jacksonville for a week getting all the things settled. And then I just started biking across country. And that was... when did I pull the plug? And on March 25th, I basically... the first time COVID came to my public consciousness was on March 17th. And then I realized that this was not something that could be ignored. It took me a day or two. COVID took a moment for me to realize what was happening. So I basically just pulled the plug and brought it to an end. Which is... so because I got caught during this, I got stuck staying at my parents' for the last 6 months. So now that we are in the calm, it has calmed down here in New York. The move is now happening. So that's sort of, I do hope at some point to go back to this trip. I did see, even though I only was on the road for 15 days, I did see some pretty incredible things during that. Let me see if I can find that photo. Because there's one thing I really, really remember was, it was the day before this. Let me go back one. And this is how I got started doing YouTube. You can see I am fully... I'm sorry if I'm subjecting you guys to my version, the 2020 version of the 20mm slides, but this is what I remember. This was a campground on the Florida-Georgia border. It had been raining. I was drenched. You can see it on my bike right here. And I had just popped my tent up, and I got to see this through a momentary break in the clouds, and it was, I really wish I had managed to finish this trip, but you said responsibility sometimes wins out. So anyway, side pocket, let's get a stream to raid, and we will call it for the night. If you have any topics and suggestions for me, please make it known in chat. Hit me up on Twitter. Otherwise, let's see here. I am all hands. Maybe what we will do, if people are interested, is for our first stream actually done in New Jersey, we might look at the standard machine language of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey, in fact, has its own programming language. If you want to know true horror... Okay. Oh, God. You know what I could see is while I'm on stream, Side Pocket is there on another stream, literally showing how you gain entry to my building, and comes up right behind me. Fortunately, I have types of, I know what locks to use to prevent this. So, my God, this is still updated. All right. Anyway, once we're ready to raid, let me know, and we will shut down the stream. And but one of these days, I really do. My God, they're still updating. They literally released a new version of standard ML for New Jersey as of yesterday, and it's apparently hosted by the University of Chicago. Okay, if I look any deeper into this, NCommander.exe has crashed. Would you like to send this error report? Okay, all right, folks. Thank you all for attending. This is NCommander signing off. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.